Hey everyone, welcome to the Financial Superfood webcast. Today is Thursday, May 9th, and today we're talking. The title of this is, basically why is debt unavoidable? Why is debt part of our lives? If you're one of the few lucky people that is either extremely wealthy, maybe you've sold a tech company, or your parents have a lot of money and you're going to be getting a lot of money, then probably you can tune out and continue on whatever else you're doing in your life. But
come here, we'll talk to you.
Yeah, we'll talk to you. But if you're one of the other 95% of the people out there, we're going to have to take on debt at some point in our life, right? So today we're talking about kind of why that is and why it's unavoidable. I think it's a nice goal to have, to maybe be debt free at some point in your life, but the way the economy continues to work and the way our financial system is set up, it's really not a choice to basically be avoiding debt, especially if there's things that we want to have or accomplish in our lives, right? Whether it's buying a house, whether it's going to school, whether it's getting a car. Most of us, even if we have the financial resources, it still may not make a whole lot of sense to buy everything with cash or buy a house with cash instead of getting a mortgage. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But first is why do we have debt? Why is this something that is inescapable for most people?
Right, because I think when you're thinking about debt and like you're talking about buying a house or going to school or any of those things that are going to project you into that next level of I'm being successful, I'm getting to that next stage, right? You're progressing through life, but the only way to get there, if you don't have a big inheritance or you didn't sell a tech company or something like that, is you have to take on debt, because most people don't have $500,000 just sitting around in a bank account. So, okay, so you say you graduate high school and you're like, well, I want to get a job that pays $100,000 a year someday. Great. Well, what's your option, right? Either start a company and pay yourself that if you're lucky enough to be that successful.
Sure.
Or what most people do is say, well, I got to go get a really fancy degree, and that costs money. And so that's where that debt comes into play.
Yeah.
And then people say, okay, now I have this degree, I'm making this money, and now it's time for me to have a house, because that's like the progression that we all believe in, right? And so then it's like, well, now I have this student loan debt, but I want to get to this next stage, so I'm going to go take on some more debt. And so it's like good and bad. It's just like this cycle of I'm getting ahead, but I'm also just piling on this burden.
Yeah, and it's the price of these ticket items that we're talking about, right? It's like, if I make the decision to go to school to better my life, well, that potentially is a really big ticket price, right? It's potentially, maybe $80,000 to $100,000 for undergrad. I mean, if you're lucky, right? That's pretty cheap. And then if you go on to get a master's degree or something, those are big ticket items that are hundreds of thousands of dollars. Again, if your parents are willing to fork that bill for you, congratulations. If not, you got to take on debt to be able to get there. And like Nick, you were saying, is that, okay, even if I now progress through that and now I have a good job and I'm working my way up through my career and I'm making a good income, well, and now I have a family, now I get married, now maybe I want to be, having a house. Well, again, I mean, what's the median price of a house in the United States, right? It's $250,000, $300,000. Again, if you're lucky, right? Depending on where you live. Here in Albuquerque, that's reasonable. In California, they'll laugh you out of the state, right? So the idea that, again, that big ticket price, right? And these prices of these things in our life, college, housing, these things continue to go up. Therefore, for everyday Americans to be able to afford these things, you have to take on debt. So really, it becomes about smart debt management, right? Debt avoidance is something you can avoid getting debt, right? If you don't go to school, if you continue to rent your whole life, it is possible to stay out of debt. Some people make that decision, but keep in mind that if you want to have those things you're talking about, is again, our society is built, America is built on personal advancement, right? If I want the house, if I want the college degree, if I want the good job, if I want the nice car, the most way people are going to be able to attain those things is by taking on debt to be able to afford them, just because they're too expensive for most people to spend on, right? And what you're talking about is, let's say, even if you have a good chunk of cash saved up, it still may not be smart to put towards that, because if I dump all my money into real estate, or I dump all my money into a college education or a car, now I've lost my liquidity. And now if I need the money, how am I going to get that back out? So even if you have the cash on hand, a lot of times it still makes sense to take on the debt, especially if the interest rate is low, and be able to manage that through your cash flow. And just understand that debt is, again, part of this life cycle and our financial life cycle that we go through in our lives.
Right. Well, and I think that debt is a way more complicated thing than what most people think about it. Most people think about debt as, well, I owe this amount per month, and that's what it is, right? But debt can get so complicated because there are good debts, right? And this is probably a conversation for another time, but there's good debt and there's bad debt, right? And so, like you're talking about, Saxon, is if you're taking on debt and you're not managing it properly, and then you lose out on liquidity to try to get ahead, then you end up not being able to afford the debt that you've taken on, and you use a different form of debt, usually bad debt, like a credit card that's 20% interest rate, and then that just gets out of hand, and then you're just snowballing into this thing. And even though you used good debt to get progression in your life, now you're stacking on this bad debt, and maybe you have to get rid of your asset that you're trying to build up. So it's really complicated. It's not just, I'm going to take on this debt and I can afford this and this and this. That's why managing all these different areas of your financial plan, right, are so important of that debt decision.
Yep.
How much can you take on, and is it just the interest rate that you have to worry about, or is it really like a cash flow thing? And it's kind of all of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So again, some of what we talked about today is, again, most people, you're going to be in position at some point in your life to have to take on debt. So again, you have to realize it's the smart management of that debt. It's not necessarily being able to avoid it, because that can be very difficult to do. So it becomes smart management, understanding good debt versus bad debt, and how to manage that so you don't get yourself in a difficult position. So everyone, we appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.